glad everyone could join us. Really excited for today's session with Lauren from goodtime.io. Lauren, hey, how's it going? Can you hear us okay?
I can. It's going really well. Can you hear me okay?
Hear you loud and clear. How's
Great.
everybody else? Can everybody else hear us? Maybe just give us a thumbs up, a +1 in the chat pane. Let's see here. Yep, I see some +1s. Right on. We are good. All right. So for those of you that this might be your first time joining us, I'm Mark Stoddard. I run sales and marketing here at Client Success, and we've been doing this webinar series now for, probably 3 or 4 months now, ever since we kind of went into the COVID quarantine, and it's been fantastic. Really excited to have Lauren on with us today. We've been going back and forth for a couple months trying to line up calendars, and I'm glad we could finally get it going today. What I'm really excited about today is, for those of you who have been on kind of the other sessions, you'll know we've got just a broad mind share of customer success, thought leaders, consultants, operators, et cetera. And I'm always especially excited when we have a real operator, somebody who's running a team, who's, building a customer success organization, driving success for their customers. And so that's what we have with Lauren today. It's going to be super tactical stuff. So you'll hopefully be able to take away a bunch of stuff that you can apply right away. And just before we jump into things, I'll share a couple other things. So as I said, this is a part of a larger webinar series we've been doing. It really has turned into just like a large masterclass in customer success, which has been really cool to see. So if you are new to customer success, or you just want to skill up and learn, I think at this point, we've touched on pretty much every key aspect of whether it's building a CS team, whether it's managing your team, whether it's starting off a renewals department from scratch. I mean, we've hit on everything. And so today's going to just continue to layer into that. Really excited for that. If you want to go back and view any of the other sessions, they're all on our website, clientsuccess.com/webinars. I'll post a link here in the chat panel in just a second. And just 2 more quick things. Again, a lot of you are new. A lot of you might not know anything about Client Success, who we are, what we do. Quick intro into us. We're a customer success growth platform. And so our mission is we help customer success teams drive great customer experience. So we'll help with the onboarding, with adoption, with renewals, with growth, anything that your customer success team needs to drive a great customer experience. That's where we help out with. And so you see here on the slide here, we're a leader on G2 in the customer success category. We were really excited and honored last month when we got the 2020 CODiE Award for the best customer success platform on the market. So if you haven't seen us in a while, or if you've never seen us before, let's have a chat. Feel free to shoot me a note. I'm Mark with a K at Client Success. You can also find us clientsuccess.com, all sorts of places to find us. And one last thing, and then I'm gonna, get into the real reason we're here. But we just 2 weeks ago started a State of Customer Success survey. And what we're doing is we're trying to survey basically the entire industry and get insights from all sorts of different folks, from big enterprise companies, small SMBs. How are you doing customer success? What are the trends? What's going on? And so I'll post the link again here. If you've already taken it, I appreciate it. You're entered into a raffle where you can win some really cool Apple prizes. If you have taken it, but somebody else in customer success hasn't taken it, please share the link. We would really appreciate it. And so, like I said, I'll post a link here in a second. But Lauren, I think we are good to go. Let's jump into it with you. I'm gonna stop share and let you run with it. Does that work?
Great. Yeah, that totally works. So,
all right.
Fantastic. My assumption is everyone can see my screen, yes?
We can see, and just to kind of, so everybody knows, I know every kind of one of these sessions is a little bit different. I think, Lauren, you said you've probably got 25, 30-ish minutes of content to share on this topic. And I will manage the chat pane. I think there's a few kind of Q&As we'll do in the middle, but most of the Q&A I think we'll save a little bit toward the end. But yeah, if you have questions, feel free to pop them in the chat pane, and we might get some of them during the presentation. We might save a lot of them until afterwards. So
definitely,
cool.
Definitely.
All right.
And so I guess I'll just caveat this with One, I have never been one to be less than loquacious. So my slides sort of reflect that. No, I am someone who really likes to present visuals and then also to just speak with slides, because I think it kind of keeps things going and it kind of reminds people where we are, because no doubt some of you may or may not be multitasking during this. So if you pop your head up and then you see like where we are, at least you'll be on the same page. But anyway, I just wanted to thank you so much, Mark. I'm super excited to be here. I'm
Yeah, we're thrilled.
thrilled to be talking about this topic. Because to me, teams is such a tremendously important thing. And I think it's the single most important thing that we as leaders should be focusing our energy on. And so I am going to be a person who talks about this subject matter forever, no matter what I'm doing or working on, whether in CS or otherwise. Because it's just the most important thing that as leaders we should focus on to make businesses successful. And I also love this quote. So you'll see on the slide, great things in business are never done by one person. They're done by a team of people. And Steve Jobs wrote that. And it's one of my favorite quotes, because teams of people really do get things done. And I think that's never been more true than right now, especially with everything we're facing. Everywhere you look, you are going to find different teams. I mean, even just to have us connected via Zoom, there's teams of people making that possible. There's teams of people keeping our grocery stores running. There's teams of people coming together to fight justice and for justice in our communities, right? So teams really do allow us to function day in and day out. And for me, teams are what makes businesses successful, and they make your customers successful, quite frankly. So if we aren't thinking about that, we're certainly underestimating and the efficacy of that as leaders, I think. And so I think it's really important to make sure that we spend some time and focus on it. And I think it's really important for us to understand what that looks like. But before I jump into teams and all of that, I wanted to share with everybody a little bit about who I am. So let's see. Okay, so here's some fun facts about me. So my name is Lauren Costella. I definitely consider myself a change agent and a communicator and a passionate champion for customer success. I've been in the CS field formally for about 8 years, and before that worked in the Department of Defense, at the Pentagon, and before that in nonprofit. But I've done everything from support to being a CSM, to being a team lead, to running CS operations. And now this is my second customer success department. Just for some results, at Medrio, which was my first executive role, I scaled the team from about 8 to 30 employees globally. Our net retention for volume contracts, which is similar to your traditional SaaS, we were at 164% net retention. And for our study or project-based customers, we were at 108%.
Just 164.
Just 164.
Just that.
Just 164. It's a little bit different. Clinical trials and software is a little bit different than traditional SaaS, but it was pretty awesome. And then our support team, we were tracking how they were actually impacting our business. So we saved our engineering team about $160,000 per year in savings by making sure erroneously classified tickets weren't going to engineering, and we were solving those things. And then in our champion and advocate program, we generated over $280,000 in sales in our second year, and $500,000 in opportunities. So having really great teams and making sure you have great teams can really have a huge business impact. And so I'm excited to continue to do that with Good Time. We finished last year at 130% net retention and 90% gross retention. So I definitely think that this is an important topic. I'm happy to share things that have worked for me and what I think work in building great teams. So let's get started, because I don't want to spend too much time there, but I would love to ask the audience, what is a cohesive CS team to you? I think it's important to start there. And I
feel free to just put those answers in the chat pane.
Yes.
So we can see all your answers. Just pop them in there or in the Q&A. We've got them all open here.
And Mark, you may need to help me because I don't think I can see it with the presenter view on.
Okay,
so
yep.
If you can just kind of like read out loud, like some of what people are saying would be awesome.
Sure, Sure. So some folks are saying things like a team that works together toward a common goal, a
Oh,
team
there we
that is
go.
extremely collaborative, another common goal. So we've got those. A team that works together to succeed versus
Hmm.
competing. A team that can share knowledge highs and lows,
Oh, yeah.
leveraging each other's strengths. This person's got to be an engineer because they said a neural network with the customer at the center. I love
Yes.
that.
Oh my gosh. These are great. No,
These are
I
great.
love it.
Yep.
Um, so I think that all of these things are really important, but I suppose the point of me asking that question really comes with the attributes that we're using to describe a team. And these are some of the things that I think about when I think about great teams. And the point here is not that we're all the same. The point is actually that we probably all have different understandings of the attributes that make up a cohesive and a great team. And that's totally great. Like, that's totally okay. But to me, I suppose inherently in that we have a problem, because if we're all not describing a great team in the same way, or a cohesive team in the same way, then how can we articulate it to the members who are part of our teams or about to join our teams? And if great teams or cohesive teams are so important and we can't agree on how to describe them, then how can we actually build and foster them, and know we're doing a very good job doing that? So to me, to have a cohesive and a great team, we actually need to be aligned on what that looks like and what that is. And so to me, I really challenge the notion that building great teams is like 101. Like, of course we need a great team. That's 101 stuff. Like, let's move on. It's actually pretty foundational. It's pretty important. And I guarantee you that most CS leaders and CS practitioners wouldn't be able to actually all collectively describe a great team. Therefore, it would be hard to go ahead and say, do we have one? And are we actually building a great team? So I'm here to kind of help level set around, I guess, like things that I've learned over time. And as a facilitator in the 5 behaviors of a cohesive team, I really like to use Patrick Lencioni's work. I think it's why reinvent the wheel? And so I really like to kind of talk about great teams within that lens. I like to talk about what I've done on different teams to help foster that. So let me just
And if you
jump
don't know
in.
Pat Lencioni's work, he's got a ton
A
of
ton of it.
really interesting books on this. So anybody that's interested in studying more on this afterwards, yeah, go
Yeah.
pick that up. And he talks about stuff that's not just business. My wife and I read his book, something about a frantic family, 3 aspects of a frantic family. But I mean, really good stuff. Can't
Oh, it's
recommend him
awesome.
highly enough.
And they are written in, kind of like novel like forms. So like it's a very
Yeah.
easy read. So very
Yep.
easy read. So these are the topics we're gonna cover. And I want to first jump into like, what is a cohesive team and why is it important to have one? And so, given my background in swimming and being on different teams, I love to start with sports. So these pictures are all different teams of which I've swum. And I point this out as these are all Stanford swimming teams, but all of them were very different. And the reason these teams were so different is because actually every year, seniors leave the team and you have new freshmen starting. And so I bring that up to say that teams are changing constantly. You have new people coming in, you have people leaving, you have growth. This is not unlike what we see in business and our own customer success teams. As we're growing and scaling, we're bringing on new CSMs, maybe new divisions, maybe new things that we're going to need to run to make that customer experience work. And the thing is if you don't foster, really great teams, and I'll describe like what a really great team is, it's going to be really hard to actually achieve your goals. And so what's really cool is that with every one of these different teams, we actually had the same goal. We wanted to win NCAAs, but we really needed to make sure that we fostered really good trust, that we could get to know each other, that we could step up and help each other, and we would want to do that, right? And all of these things, when I think about the bonds that my teams created at different points at Stanford, I didn't really know how to describe it other than, like we are just all have each other's backs. We're all going towards this single goal. We all know what that goal is. And when I started reading Patrick Lencioni's work, I realized it was the same types of attributes that, you know, great teams have. And these attributes, I think, are what we kind of all need to align on in order to manage our own customer success teams. So from the 5 behaviors of a cohesive team, when I think about what that is and the way that Patrick Lencioni describes it, I think is kind of a perfect way to frame how we should think about teams. And the way he describes a cohesive team is essentially these 5 behaviors: trust, conflict, commitment, accountability, and results. And trust in this case is like the most foundational piece to a cohesive team. And it's vulnerability-based trust. And the reason that you would have vulnerability-based trust is just this idea that you need people to admit the truth about themselves, and you need them to admit, hey, when I need help, or hey, you might be better at that than me, in order to make sure we achieve the actual team goal, right? We've all seen those basketball teams where, you know, when the people work together, they're actually scoring a ton of points, right? But if you have just one superstar who tries to play every single role, it's very rare that you actually get to the result of winning. So trust is really important because we have to be able to admit what we're good at and actually what we're not good at. And we have to be able to be okay to ask for help. So trust is really important. And I think we all probably know what a team looks like when you lack trust, right? People probably conceal their weaknesses. They hesitate to ask for help. They don't want constructive feedback. They don't offer help. They jump to conclusions about intentions and aptitudes of other people. They fail to recognize and tap into different people's skill sets. People hold grudges. And you basically waste a lot of time and energy managing kind of that behavior. So trust to me is like really important. And the whole point of having a really great team is to really get rid of like the things that prevent us from achieving those results, right? It's like, who wants to spend their time on politics? Who wants to spend time, you know, mitigating this team and that team and politicking? No one. So if you have really great trust, you probably don't need to worry about politics, right? Because you can actually admit when things aren't going right, get the help where needed, and people are, again, going towards that one common goal. The second piece around and, you know, predicated from trust is conflict. And you need to be able to have healthy conflict in your team. I see conflict a lot, but it doesn't always occur in the healthiest of ways. And then actually more common than conflict, I actually see artificial harmony. So people agreeing to things or actually not challenging each other because they're afraid of losing someone's relationship, right? Like, and that happens so many times. So you really need to be able to have conflict and debate ideas. And if you have trust, you're not actually debating the person, or you're not actually telling someone or like getting down to personal aspects. You're actually debating the idea itself. And when you have trust, you can actually have space for that. And so that's really important. Like if you have trust, you can have space for healthy conflict and debate ideas. And if everyone who's in the team has the chance to offer up different ideas and their opinions and can debate it, they're much more likely to commit to that idea to move forward, right? So that's the whole commitment piece here. We need to be able to have trust and conflict so actually people are committed to whatever you decide to move forward with. And once you're committed, then you can actually hold each other accountable. You know, hey, Mark, you didn't do this thing that you said you were going to do. What happened? I should be able to tell a team member that. I should be able to tell my peers that. And I think what happens most of the time is accountability is really tough. And what I've seen happen is people on the team will go to the leader and say, this person isn't doing, you know, their fair share, or I'm doing more than this person. Your team should be able to talk to each other about accountability and should be holding each other accountable. And what happens more often than not is people believe that's not my job, or I'm not the manager, that's not in my space or realm to do that. And that is actually false. If we're all going towards the same goal, it is absolutely your responsibility to hold your teammates accountable. But what usually is missing are all these pieces below. either there's not trust, there wasn't a chance to debate ideas, and there was a lack of commitment. So people don't hold each other accountable. And then when you have
It's
all these
interesting. I
things,
find on the
yeah,
accountability piece, when I have had people that come to me in that exact scenario, when somebody
yes,
comes to me and says, so and so is not upholding their end of the bargain. One of the key things that I've always had I've had to learn is how, okay, instead of going and handling that myself as the leader, I now need to coach that person to go back and hold that other person accountable. And of
yes,
course, there's a signal that something I've done is still not. I've still got work to do in building a cohesive team. But that's usually one of the first mistakes I see managers make is someone talks to them about somebody on the team. Okay, I'll handle it. Well,
yes.
actually, that's not necessarily the right answer in this situation.
Absolutely. I think that's exactly it, Mark. Like what I've seen, and actually I've made the mistake too of like, oh, okay, well,
Yeah,
I'll go
seen
talk
and
to that
done
person.
for sure.
Yeah, I've done it. So like the first thing I'll do is say, oh, okay, well, thanks for letting me know. Let me go talk to this person. But the thing is you should never be the person debating that. You should be letting your team debate that. And how many times does this happen at the executive level too? Where you're going to your boss and saying, oh, like, hey, Mark in sales, he's kind of doing the wrong sales. I'm getting now these customers that don't really fit. And like, why am I not going to Mark? Why am I not going to Mark and saying, hey, Mark, look, I love what you're doing, but hey, we're selling to the wrong customers. What can we do about this? We've committed
Sure.
to like X, Y, and Z, right?
Yep.
So it's going to be really important to make sure that to have that and to be able to hold people accountable, this takes a lot of energy to build, like these 5 behaviors. And honestly, and it kind of fits into like the next piece is like, how does this impact? It impacts CS in every way. Like if you're familiar with the McKinsey 2.0 growth model, I'm a huge fan of this. All of these areas are areas in which I look at how do I scale my team? I need to make sure I have all of these pieces in place. In order to have these pieces in place, it actually requires a ton of cross-team collaboration. For example, if I'm going to have a unified go-to-market, I'm going to be working pretty closely with my product marketing team, with marketing, sales, et cetera, right? In order to be able to make sure that we're on the same page, we have to be able to get into the weeds and talk about how are we going to do something? When is stuff working well? When is it not? If you have egos and politics and miscommunication and no buy-in, you're not going to be able to do any of these things well, which means you actually can't build out a CS model, which means you actually can't help your customers. And at the end of the day, like when I think about what really happens when you don't have like a good CS team, you have turnover in customer success, you lose productivity, you have burnout, you have underserved customers, and overall it's just like super expensive. So again, cohesive teams, really, really important. And when we look at it in the opposite way, I love this, like a productive, high functioning team. Like let's think about not what it like prevents us from doing, but think about what it does allow you to do. You get to make faster decisions. You get to tap into the skills of everyone. You limit the politics and confusion and destructive behavior. And I don't know about you, but I hate talking about the wrong issue or the same topics over and over again when I thought we made a decision. Cohesive teams like definitely don't do that because it's very clear. And so that's why I want to kind of get into what do you need to build kind of cohesive teams. And there's a few things, but first and foremost, I like to encourage people to really understand who your team is. So there's a ton of different ways you can look at the behaviors of people on your team or who they are. So I've used all of these things, Strength Finders, Myers-Briggs, DISC, but I really like to understand who people are so that we can find ways to best communicate with one another and that we can work together on a team. And so I've used DISC in the past. I think it's pretty simple. And actually that's what our whole company uses here at Good Times. So everyone has their DISC profile and it's only 4 letters, D, I, S, and C. And it's easy to remember. So D being driver, I being influencer, S being steady, and C being conscientious. And there's different strengths, but this allows you to kind of pick out what are your natural behaviors and then how would you respond. And the point here is by understanding your team, you can realize kind of pretty quickly, all of it matters, but specifically in trust, when you're building trust, the way people act and the way they behave can sometimes either erode trust just because there's a lack of understanding, or it can actually like create the foundation for people to build better trust. So just as an example, again, I use DISC, and very practically speaking, these folks on the D and C side tend to be more task and logic oriented. So if you've ever met anyone who's just really direct and to the point and say, just go do this, that is a very like D style.
I've taken the DISC assessment 4 times now, and I cannot get away from being smack dab in the middle of D every single time.
Don't worry, I've taken about like 1,000 times, and I'm like right smack in the middle of I. So, but it is really funny because when it comes to, for example, trust, like, so if these are task and more logic oriented, and this side is more relationship and relationship oriented and people oriented, you might actually have just conflicts in just your natural behavior types, which could, you know, kind of erode our ability to build trust with one another. So it's really important to understand how, like, and who makes up your team so you can actually be able to build trust. And so like when I'm thinking of an example here, the C's and D's on this side, when it comes to trust, they actually look for trust to be earned, right? So someone, they really look at like people earning that trust with regard to, hey, your competency. Like, so if you're really competent, that might bring in more trust. And overt attempts to gain trust and being really open actually for these people might be seen as manipulative and might be met with skepticism. And they might even give off, like these folks over here, kind of a guarded vibe, even if it's only really subtle. On the other side of this, like on the I and S side, it's really funny. It tends to be more open in terms of trusting. Like, so you're just kind of, hey, I'm trusting until you violate that trust. And so you kind of assume the best, and then you only lose trust if that's, if it's violated, and or if like the behavior that someone's exhibiting is cold or inconsiderate. So what's really funny is, in and of itself, this is like a conundrum. You've got people on one side who give off a guarded vibe, and then on the other, you have people who are naturally trusting, but then could be put off by a guarded vibe. And that could actually destroy the trust on your team. So suffice it to say, it's really, really important to make sure you understand your team, you understand how different behavior types can affect that, and you start educating your team about it so that you can actually build that super, super foundation of trust, and understand that all of these behaviors are going to act differently within all of these areas. So even how people address conflict or commitment and accountability. On the D side, we were just talking about it, Mark, accountability, Ds have no problem just saying, you missed this, you did this, like what's going on? Whereas, you know, an S who's on the exact opposite side of a D would be kind of more, hey, I think this might be going on, and might modify like their behavior, but could be very, very put off if someone is that direct. And so it's just a really good thing to understand who are you working with in order to make sure that you can actually build these behaviors into your team. Okay, so what else do you need to build a team besides understanding who your team members are? Well, it's pretty simple. You definitely need a scoreboard. So when I think about like what a scoreboard looks like, you can only measure, you know, how you're doing by understanding like where are you going. In swimming, it was pretty simple. Like we wanted to win NCAAs, our scoreboard was our times and as individuals. And then when we go to different dual meets, the more dual meets we won, the more confident we were going into NCAAs that we could win, right? And so having a scoreboard and understanding how you're doing and the goal that you've set is pretty important. I think sometimes people forget that, but that's why we have metrics, right? How close are we to the goal, and what are we likely to do? And the great thing about a scoreboard is if we're off track, we're able to actually come up with different solutions to get back on track. So in swimming, when we were off track, we would be able to adjust workouts, weight training, diet, other things to help improve our performance to hit that target. So make sure you have a scoreboard. And I have a couple practical tips here. You also need to consider and create a communication cadence. So here's mine. I have a daily stand-up with my team. It's about 15 minutes. I have manager, peer, and direct one-on-ones. They're about 30 minutes, and they're bi-weekly. I do a weekly L10 with the exec team. It's an hour and a half. I actually run this meeting, and it's really cool. I'll provide the agenda here as more practical, like at the end. I do
Is
an
L10 the EOS? Explain that for folks who are not
yeah.
exposed to EOS. I think that's we could do a whole other session on that. That'd be
We
fascinating.
could, and I provide the agenda in these slides, and for anyone who needs them, you can like check it out, and then I could probably explain further. But L10 is actually a level 10 meeting. It means like at the end of our meeting, we rate it. Was our meeting a 0? It's kind of like an NPS score, right? Is it a 0 or is it a 10? The best meeting I've ever been part of. The goal is to always be at 9 or 10. And a 9 or 10 meeting is did we accomplish what we came to accomplish? Did we have, were things straight? Did we leave knowing exactly like what we came to accomplish, and there's next steps, or there's that we feel like we talked about like the right things? And that's going to differ in different meetings that you're in, of course, but for our manager exec team level, a really important meeting. And I do this in my exec level team, but I also do it with my customer success team. And then there's, I do cross-functional issue list L10 meetings. So it's still rating the meeting. It's kind of a shortened version of this, but it's basically, I meet with every, and not just me, like my team meets cross-functionally with sales, marketing, product, to make sure that we can raise up issues or process issues within each team. Because you're gonna, as you're working cross-functionally, you're going to run into issues. For example, a really common one, okay, well, what is the account executive's role in a renewal when CS is going to kind of renew this account? Who's doing what? Those are process things that can totally be raised as issues and then worked out among the team in this meeting. There's sometimes things of not only process, but even just feedback or accountability. So all of those things can be discussed here. And it gives a place to put those things. What I love about issues lists and L10s, which I'll explain in a couple other slides, is I love being able to have a place to put something that's on my mind and then know it's been captured somewhere. Typically, I find that people do that with one-off meetings. Oh, hey, can I grab you for like 2 minutes? Can I grab you here for 2 minutes? That ends up creating a lot of meetings. And probably today, even more so, right? Because we're all remote. So having an L10 issues list and kind of this communication cadence allows for those one-off meetings to become very, very few, if at all. I really don't have one-off meetings because we have a place to put our issues. We have a place to discuss them. And if they're important enough, they'll get discussed. And so I really encourage that. I also do a newsletter and all hands, like as a company, which is part of our communication cadence, host lunch and learns, and then do a quarterly offsite. So these are kind of the communication cadences that I encourage people to definitely take advantage of. And for me, it might seem like a lot here, but I promise you that establishing a rhythm will actually save you time, because again, it'll limit the one-off stuff, which may seem like an urgent topic or a strategic topic or something, but honestly, in all of these things, you shouldn't need one-off meetings. And if you are doing a ton of one-off meetings, you should ask why.
Yeah, you find most people are doing some version of this already, just in a terribly inefficient way, and more often than not.
Well, I promise I provide some agendas for folks, and then I'm happy to help like answer questions. It takes a little bit of time to get into the rhythm, but once you do, I had very skeptical executive team, to be honest. You could talk to my VP of marketing, Yuval. He was like, yeah, I wasn't really sure about this L10, Lauren. He was like, and now I'm like, he was like, I want to bring this everywhere I go. Like if I have a good time. So hopefully it's helpful. It wasn't my brainchild, but adopting it is really important. And then you can adjust it for what works for you. And then I guess what I would tell people, like more practically, is you actually need dedicated time and focused energy on building a team. This is my full-time job. I do not tell the team where we need to focus or what. I do not build out our quarterly roadmap. My team does, but that's because they're raising the right things. And then we know all I'm doing is helping to facilitate the discussion and facilitating it into something where we can take action. So let me tell you, building teams is probably 60 to 70% of my time. and building that rhythm and making sure that we can actually achieve our goals. And it's really, by doing this, it builds a space for our team to work together. There's no politics, and it's very bottom up in the sense that we're working on the right things, because my CSMs and support teams, and actually our account executives and those who are working directly with clients, they are the ones who are at the ground level. They know what's going on. So I can't be the one to dictate what's most important. They have to be the ones who dictate that. And then we have to just put it into a way to invest in it and then put the right resources toward it. It should never be like me saying, no, we're going to do this because I think that's the right way. Got to come from the bottom up, because they're hearing from clients on a regular basis. So I want to get into some practical tips, and I know like I want to leave like a couple times. So I'm going to go through this relatively fast, but you can always talk to me or connect with me. I'm happy to offer kind of any help in this. But first of all, to get an understanding of your teammates, there's a bunch of free stuff out there that you can use, paid or unpaid. I've done both. I've done paid stuff through DISC, but I've also done unpaid things. There's Strength Finders too. You can buy that book, but I highly encourage, like, just go ahead and do the free thing with your team. Like, understand it, start to learn more about each other's natural behaviors. That's an easy thing you can start doing today. You can send people this link and then just start learning about who people are, what are some of those natural behaviors, and how could they impact each other. Ask your team how it impacts. For the scoreboard stuff, I'm a big fan of not only having KPIs and metrics, but really getting down to the scorecard level. So I like building scorecards for each individual person. And it can be really simple. I don't do job descriptions for roles. It's a scorecard. And it's really, really simple. It's got a mission, functional accountabilities, metrics. So when someone comes in, they know what metrics they're being held to. If you're on a support team, for example, you'll know that you need to hit a minimum of 90% CSAT. You'll need to have certain case resolutions in a certain amount of time. You'll need to have a certain number of tickets answered. So then if that doesn't sound like an activity you want to do, you can self-select out. So again, have your scoreboard, know what those goals are, and put them in front of people so they can actually make a decision as to whether or not they want to be part of that team and part of those goals. Okay, so this is kind of the fun stuff, because this gets into the communication cadence that I was talking about. And so with the communication cadence, first, let me talk about establishing rules for meetings. So with meetings, I have a set of techniques that are part of every meeting. Again, not my brainchild. I learned this from some coaches at Freescale Coaching, and they brought that to Medrio as part of our executive team, and I've adopted it because I love it. Basic rules: meetings start and end on time. Everyone's needed, and there's equal time. We don't discuss things we can read. We make decisions. We have an agenda, and we define our outcomes before we start. And the techniques we use are really, really helpful. We use this technique with our issues list called Keep, Kill, Combine. Sometimes people bring up the same issues going into meetings, so super important to make sure you kind of combine different ideas or the same ideas together. Make sure that you have like a clean list. You kill things off the list that aren't important or that can't be defined. And it's okay if it can't be defined, but kill it off your list until you can define it. And then we use this technique called IDS, which is identify, debate, and discuss. And then we come up with a solution, like what are we going to do next? And it's really important to have this time and equal time. So this is where your teams are really made, like you make or break your teams, right? Because everyone needs the chance to either bring up like their point of view about something or an idea. And you as a leader need to really help facilitate and pull that out of different people, because you're going to have people that are quieter on the team and you're going to have people who overtake your meetings on a team. Make sure you hear from everyone, because that really allows for better commitment. Elmo, one of my favorite phrases, and no, not the little furry guy from Sesame Street. Elmo is everybody let's move on. What you'll find a lot is as people are discussing issues, they give tons of examples about why the issue is a problem or how the issue is a problem. And usually what happens is, I don't know, for me, I get bought into issues pretty quickly. I'm like, okay, I can see it. But then people continuously, the teams continuously talk about why it's an issue or how it's an issue. And so it's a really good technique to say, I'm going to go ahead and Elmo that I think we can agree that it's an issue. So why don't we talk about like, now, how do we kind of move that forward, or what aspect is an issue, and make sure you really dig into why. So in the time that it takes to debate and discuss, it's important as the leader to understand, is the discussion moving it forward to be able to come up with a solution, or is the discussion just a giant session of complaining? And you have to be able to say, totally get it's an issue, why don't we talk about solving it, right? So that capability, and as a leader, really important. Elmo is a great technique for that, because, and my team uses it with each other. As people get very verbose, my team uses it with me. As a loquacious person, they're like, Elmo, Lauren, Elmo, move, like, let's move forward. You're probably thinking that right now, Elmo, move forward. Anyway, cool. So Elmo is a really great technique. And then disagree and commit. So one of the things that's really important in meetings as you go through these cadences is, not everyone is going to agree, and your goal is not to have consensus. Your goal is to have commitment. It's okay for someone to fundamentally disagree with a way forward. The fact is you need to be committed to it, like as a teammate. So people on my swim team could be fundamentally against wanting to go to NCAAs and win. Rather, they want to focus their time on, Pac-12s. Well, as a team, we've committed to NCAAs. And so you could fundamentally disagree with like trying to win NCAAs, but as a team, that's what we're going for. And that's what we're holding people accountable to. And that's okay. It's just that we need people all being committed towards the same goal, because that's what we're going to be driving toward with everything we have. And oftentimes you'll see people say they'll commit in the meeting, or they'll say fine, but then they're not really committed. That's where accountability becomes really important. It's, did you have the chance to speak up? And are you really committed to this way forward? And it's okay to not agree with the way forward, but we do have to commit to it. And it happens. Sometimes your idea is not chosen, but when you have a really cohesive team, it's okay. We go for it. And sometimes you have to go back and, come up with a different solution, and that's okay too. So I want to share quickly some of the agendas that I have. So I said that I do like a daily stand-up. We usually do no more than 15 minutes, but with COVID, we actually do 10 minutes of meditation beforehand. It's optional for people, but we always talk about gratitude, work or not. Like, what's one thing that, you're really thankful for? What's one thing that went well? What's one thing you're going to get done? And any blockers. And so in the past 3 months, we've unblocked 24 different issues, which allowed us to hit home. And so I love daily stand-ups because it's just an easy way to say, hey, this is blocking me. This person is blocking me from doing X, and it either allows us to raise it to unblock it or to just bring it up for visibility. So I highly recommend a daily stand-up. It's just a quick touch base with the team. One-on-one agendas. This is most of my team. We actually do, it's 30 minutes or less, and you can see that I've highlighted the personal high and low. This is really important for building trust with you and your teammates. Like, understanding where people are coming from on a personal level is probably one of the most important things you can do as a leader, because we bring our whole selves to work each and every day. And even now, it's probably even more apparent because we're working remotely or from home. And so everything that's going on in our lives is important to talk about. And with things going on in the world today, important to understand and make sure you understand where is someone personally coming from, and then professionally, because it could be impacting these other areas. And then another favorite part that I really love is, what can we, the company, do to help improve or help you? I really like that, because this is not about, what's one thing that I can do? It's what can the company do? And it's making and forcing the problem solving to go back on the person who's bringing up issues. It's not just about dumping the issues on me, the leader, or you, the leader. It's about, what are the things that you need in order to unblock or to move things forward or to be successful? And then, of course, one thing I'll point out is meeting rating. Really important. It's important to rate all your meetings 0 to 10. You'd be surprised at the results. This was my L10 meeting structure. So, and of course, it's not mine. I adopted it from the coaches from Freescale, but I love it. It's 0 to 10, 0 being the worst, 10 being the best meeting. We definitely, if we don't use the entire time, we get it back. So if we don't have any issues to discuss, we just give people back their time. And over the past 10 weeks, and I could probably add more to this now, since this was probably done like a month ago, We have rated an 8.77. And the reason for that is we unpack tough issues, break it down into actions, and actually put in an owner and a due date. And then the reason for low scores during meetings was when we weren't prepared, or we jumped around, or people were talking too much and we didn't facilitate things out. So I highly recommend in an L10 or in a meeting where you're discussing issues, that you really make it clear and things are prepared, and you as the leader help to facilitate good discussion, but don't use that Elmoing technique. And I can talk through kind of any of this and the importance of all of these areas at any time, but I think that this is really, really powerful. And like I said, I run it with our executive team, and it's made a huge difference in being able to be focused, to make sure we talk about the right issues and we're not talking about small or the wrong issues, or we're keeping it at the right level. And then also, I talked about having cross-functional issues lists. So you can see, we use Asana and Notion actually for some of these things, but the way that I work with cross-functional teams is we actually identify issues and we debate and solve, solve for next steps. So you can see that this might be something I talk about with sales, and you can see we've had issues like roles and responsibilities between AEs and CSMs or things like that. The important thing here is that we need to identify what's going on. We actually then prioritize, like, how important is this issue for our team? So what happens a lot is people bring up all different types of issues, and it's important to understand, like, how important is it? So a number one priority is both highly strategic and highly urgent. A number two is highly strategic and urgent. And then a three is like strategic but not urgent. And four is low strategic, low urgent. So it's really important to just make sure that you prioritize your issues in the right way. So you talk about like the most important stuff. So for example, if someone said, hey, we need a new coffee pot for the office, that might be rated a 4 in terms of not strategic and not really urgent, I guess, depending on how much you're a coffee drinker, but probably not something we're going to talk about first. But it still can make it onto the list. So again, you have a place to put these issues that are bothering you, and then we rank them as a team to actually get through them. And then when we discuss and debate the issue, we really, really spend a lot of time asking why the issue is a problem. Like, why is this an issue? Why does that matter? And really get down to the most important thing. Are we talking about a symptom, or are we talking about something greater? It's really important, and this takes the greatest deal of time, is facilitating, talking about issues and not getting lost into a discussion of why it's an issue. Or don't get lost in the discussion of how something is an issue or all the examples. Just make sure that you agree it's an issue, you know it's important, and you know how it impacts the company, and then try to get people into solving, like, how do we actually solve for it? So I suggest answering the questions: what is an issue? Why is it an issue? How do you know it's an issue? Who does it impact? And how pervasive is that? And if you keep asking like those questions, you can usually get down to exactly what's going on. And then you can decide, how do we solve it? Sometimes these issues are like really cross-functional, or would require a lot of process change, and that's okay. What that can become then is an initiative for the company to work on or to take on. And what's cool is when it's identified by the team members themselves, they often want to be involved in that project. So you're probably asking now, like, why does any of this work? Or do I know that this stuff works? And I promise you, like, it is worth it. I would say that it's just all in the results. And so again, like, I'm going to go back to good time. Like, we had 130% net retention, 89% gross retention. I did this with the team at Medrio as well. And you heard our results earlier. So I would also just talk to the team. Like, they would tell you it's like really, it's pretty effective. And I would also say, feel free to talk to my executive team too. I'm sure they would give you kind of an idea of like how this works and whether or not it's working for them. And since we're still doing it,
it's obviously working.
Moving forward, I think it does. So, and that's it. That's all I have. And I know I only left 10 minutes for questions, but yeah.
Cool. No, this has been fantastic. And I think we could probably do another 12 hours on this if we really wanted to dig in. But yeah, there's definitely some questions here. I'll go through as many of the questions as we can have time for. We got 10 minutes or so. So I'll just go through them. One question that I've kind of had is sometimes I run into, a manager, a leader who, let's say they manage a customer success team. So they manage, several CSMs, or a sales manager who manages several sales reps. And something where it's like I'm managing a team of individual contributors who are kind of doing the same job.
Hmm.
It's not like I'm managing a team of, okay, there's these 5 people that are doing drastically different jobs. Like on a marketing team, you might have an SEO and an email and a website person that are doing very different jobs. Where, like in the sales or the CS case, I'm managing a team of individual contributors. So I've seen some leaders kind of have the mindset of, "Oh, I'm going to focus less on the building a cohesive team and more on, if I've got a bunch of really good individual contributors who are doing their job and hitting their numbers, that's what's going to what would you say to someone who has that mindset?"
Yeah, that's a great question. So first and foremost, the way I would actually go ahead and admit, my team, we all have one goal. So we have one net retention number, and everyone is held to that. And there is no individual goal. I mean, there
Okay,
is an individual
interesting.
goal because
Yep.
everyone has to do their part to
Hmm.
hit the team goal, but they're only compensated for the team goal.
Interesting. Okay.
Now, the reason we do that is because I want people to hold each other accountable. If you're only holding
Hmm.
yourself accountable and you're only held to your own performance, then why would you even care about like what the team's doing, because it's only you? And yet,
Hmm.
the bigger picture is actually all of our customers, and how we do as a net retention across our entire
Hmm.
team is what makes the company successful. It's what makes our customers successful. So it's not about like your individual, even though your individual performance
Hmm.
helps, it's about everyone working together towards that end goal. And
Gotcha.
what's
Yep.
really great is by having kind of the alignment around one goal, people can actually help each other and are more inclined to help each other because, hey, my portfolio is doing really well this quarter. What's going on with yours? How can I help you? Or what can we do process wise to adopt some of the things that are working versus not? And
Gotcha.
that's been really helpful. We've been doing that for the past 2 quarters here where we have one team goal, and we did it the entire time I was at Medrio.
Gotcha. Cool. Cool. Yeah. That's sometimes people forget the idea of just aligning incentives. Like
Yep.
if incentives are aligned, in this case, you've aligned the entire team incentive, the entire team goal around the team goal. That's one way to get around it. I'm going to keep going through questions. So Thomas asked this question. I think he asked it a minute ago when you were talking about blockers, and he says, "I'd love to hear more about the methodology you use to unblock blockers."
Yes. Okay. Well, thank you, Thomas, for that question. So blockers are really specific. So people can't just say, the product's blocking me. You have to say, this person is blocking this, like blocking X, Y, and Z,
Hmm.
which is preventing me from doing X. So for example, in our company, like even just this morning, Peter, our CTO is, and he like knows one aspect of our product that's not documented, is blocking me from getting an answer back to this customer. Lauren, I need your help to unblock it. Can you mention this in your daily stand-up? I go to my exact daily stand-up right after our stand-up and I say, Peter, you're blocking Erin on this and you just have this blocker on you because you're not getting back to her. And typically it only takes that for someone to actually take action. Or Peter, our CTO, could say, I've heard it. I can get to it by this date. And then I can communicate, or he can communicate that date back to Erin. And then at least we're like, no, okay, by this date, this has to be done, or else you're a blocker again. Oh,
Got it. Cool.
so, and
Passion.
happy to, yeah, passion. I know. I'm a total I.
Yep, I love it. All right, let me jump to another one. So Melinda asks, the CSM team is trying to improve our department, but we work with many other departments, as is
Yeah.
always the case. How do you shift a culture change? How do you shift a culture change or a mindset to encourage healthy conflict and accountability? Kind of like, where do you start with that if that's not part of our culture?
Yeah, it really has to start with trust. So one, like what I would say is coming from a communications background too, you have to understand that building culture and building trust and building cohesive teams will not happen overnight. You can't just take this stuff and start doing it. It's just all of a sudden going to work. You really have to bring around, like, first, is there just awareness that one, maybe there's an issue. So maybe you would just have to open up, like, do we think there's an issue with culture?
Mm-hmm.
And how? And what does that look like? And so as you bring awareness to it, then you can start thinking about, okay, well, what could we do? And if you frame it in like the trust, then conflict, commitment, accountability, and results, then it can be, okay, well, how do we start building trust among the team? And where do we think that that is lacking? And trust to me is about understanding, again, who people are and how do they maybe approach situations and how that could affect the dynamics within a group. And if it's across the company, my suggestion would be start with your own team. Like, I had to really start building trust with my own team when I first started, right? Like, that was my number one priority, because I needed to make sure that my team could come to me about anything and I can go to them about anything, and it is perfectly clear. And everyone, I can 100% say, has said, I can come to you about anything and go to anyone on the team. The next piece is, I would say, then work with a co-team. Like, we started with product just because naturally we were having some like issues there, but start with one team and start identifying, hey, do you think this is an issue and how can we work on it together? I've definitely done that with sales. Sales, we just brought into the fold, and I have to admit, it's taken a little bit of time. But you have to start with, what is the issue? And what is the issue, like, with culture? If we're trying to build this, we want to do better. Can we be in agreement that we want to do better as a team? How do we do this? How do we start building that trust? And so that's where I would start, like, start with your team, then start with another team, and understand it's going to take awareness. Then as you get to more awareness, people are going to start to get understanding, and then they can start with like actually adopting and then advocating. And it takes a lot of time. Like, I've only been at the position where my team is totally on the same page with me. It took probably like 4 or 5 months to build that. And then now with sales, like, we're only just starting to get into like candid feedback and being able to call out behavior. And like, it's taken quite some time. I've been at Good Times 7 or 8 months, and we're just only at probably the understanding portion. But it is really important. You have to keep pushing for it.
Let's pull on that thread, because I think we have time for one more question. And David just made this comment that segues nicely from what you said there. So he says trust and feedback are intertwined. And then his question is, how do you bridge the need for pointed feedback while still building trust? Like, how do you, is it steps on the pyramid and you have to do one before you get to the next one, or how do you think about it?
I think that giving feedback is, and holding people accountable is probably one of the most difficult things for anyone to do. You always find it in teams when you start measuring teams, and as a trained facilitator, it is like the hardest. It's where teams struggle the most. The way I like to talk about and give feedback is more of like setting the stage of, hey, I have kind of an uncomfortable topic to bring up. I need to be able to offer feedback. Are you okay with that? Or I need to talk about this subject. It has some difficult points of feedback. Can we discuss it? And I also like to lay the foundation too before we go into, say, behavioral things or accountability things, to say, I really respect you, and I think you really respect me. And so as we talk today about an uncomfortable topic, I'd really like to help solve for the issue, and kind of work through, like, it's not personal. It's more of like, let's just kind of get to the core issue of what's going on. And sometimes people self-identify. They're like, yep, I did this, I missed this. So it's really important to kind of set the stage of, hey, we have mutual respect, and also setting the stage of, I have a difficult conversation and I'd like the space, like, let's create the space so we can talk about it.
Got it. No, I think I can't disagree with anything you've said over the last hour. This has been awesome. I really appreciate you taking the time. I can speak for everybody else. This has been fantastic. There still are other questions.
I'm happy to answer them too. Yeah, if you like, if we get them out of the Zoom, I'm happy to like just jot down my answers.
Cool. Yeah, maybe that's what I'll do. I'll take a list of all the questions, send them over, and then we can figure out how to answer them. Send them in a follow-up email or anything. But really appreciate the timing. I know several people got to jump, and so we're going to be respectful of everyone's time. This has been really great. Any last words, call to actions, advice, any last things you want to share with everybody?
Yeah, well, first and foremost, I just want to thank everyone for giving me the chance to, talk about teams. Is something that I care passionately about. I just want to thank you, Mark, for the platform to be able to do so. And I would say, just as advice for everyone, it is not like, it takes practice. Facilitating teams, facilitating discussion, going back and forth, and like being able to have uncomfortable, like getting comfortable being uncomfortable. It just takes a ton of practice and time. So please, please, please do not give up. Like, understand it's not like a one and done thing. It's happening all the time, which is why I think it's so important. Like, I do this every day, the majority of my day. So just understand it's going to take time and practice, but it is possible. And if you just keep pushing at it, it will work. I promise, I promise, I promise. And I'm happy to help in any way that I can, because I think it's so important.
Awesome. No, this has been great. Really appreciate it. We'll end it there. So thanks, Lauren, for her time. Thanks to everybody for their questions. And we will see you next time. So we'll chat soon.